Hey everyone, welcome to the Commando cast. I'm Alex.
And I'm Andrew, and today Alex and I are giving 5 deck lists for the new Convergence meta. Alright guys, so this is week 1 of the Convergence meta. So what Alex and I want to do, we kind of were chatting, we wanted to take a look at what we think is going to kind of, I don't know, infiltrate to begin, right? What right. Decks. So what we're going to do is we're going to go through 5 decks and we're going to kind of give initial lists, right? Now to be clear, these are not tuned. These do include draft kit stuff, with the exception of one of Alex's lists he wasn't able to publish on the DB, so I'll update that at a later time. Because as of the time of publishing this episode, the DB is not allowing for publishing of the new draft kit, which is completely acceptable. So let's go ahead and get started. So I guess before we get started with the actual lists, what do you expect really to generally dominate the meta?
So I think you'll have a Padme someone deck, whoever the someone is. I think it's a little bit up in the air still, but I think you'll have 2-wide, indirect, focused. So Padme obviously fits that bill.
Or Snoke Tarkin. I've already put my flag in the sand saying that's going to be strong going forward.
Right. So I think you have Snoke Tarkin, Padme, Yoda, Padme, whoever, in sort of like the indirect focus deck. And then I think you'll have some variety of probably a Phasma deck of some sort. I'm not
just
entirely
for pure
sure.
aggro, I mean. Right.
And I think that'll just be try to race you to however much health, because that is a little bit lacking. The Ride Shield obviously helps. Some sort of Phasma deck, which is sort of I think maybe Phasma deck is almost kind of similar to the Padme or Toke Snarkin.
Yeah, you got it. Yeah, that's it.
Whatever, I got it. That deck where it's just, death by 1,000 cuts. I'm going to ping you for indirect damage over and over again until you die. And I think you'll have a Snoke sort of 3-wide, big vehicle, Mega Blaster, Vader's Fist.
Sure.
Sort of those types of decks. And then maybe somewhere you'll see sort of like an Infus Nest Scoundrel type deck. And then also the Hero Shadowcaster is obviously
basically unaffected.
Right, that thing, that deck I don't think changes much. And so I think it won't get played a ton at the beginning because people tend to play the new stuff. Right. And that deck basically is unaffected, minus maybe We're Home, which lets you reset a little bit easier, but other than that, the deck is more or less the same from the prior set. So I think that deck is incredibly strong, still is really strong, just maybe won't get played. And similar in that is sort of Leia Lando or some flavor of Mill that sort of also stays relatively the same. Yeah,
and to that end, I think Hanbig's Falcon actually was essentially, so they lose a lot of the obvious ones like Hit and Run, but they did pick up Instigate. We're Home, and again, is another one they picked up. You do have to be a little more careful with how you play We're Home, with how the triggers stack, right? Because you have to complete the initial trigger before you start activating the others, right? So you have to complete We're Home before you trigger the other activation. So you can't remove like a Biggs die, or sorry. So say you play We're Home to activate the Falcon and Han, and then you use the Falcon to activate Biggs. You can't remove a Biggs die to do that because Biggs wouldn't have been rolled in yet with the completion of We're Home.
So I think basically you need to have a die showing a resource already in the pool, right? When you play it, to be able to reliably
do it. Yeah. So, but I'm just saying, just with the way the triggers stack, you have to be careful. So, but again, with Instigate, obviously we didn't get any new mods, so I don't think that really changes anything. I don't know that either of those decks really need new mods as it is, though.
No, so I think they're about as good. And then I don't know, some sort of blue Styx deck, maybe Hero Blue. I think people will try it. I'm not super enthusiastic or optimistic as how good it'll be. And then a Palpatine deck.
Sure. Just because people want to. Right. I don't think that deck's going to be very good. We'll see. And then I actually wouldn't be surprised if we actually see K2 Mace, just because it's, again, like you said, it's new toys. They pair well together. It sticks.
I think Mace someone will be a deck. I think Mace is really good. I don't know. I don't think he has a home really right now. I think on the whole he's good. I just don't know if he'll get there. And then maybe there'll be some sort of 5-die hero blue deck.
I think someone will try it
with Ahsoka and Ezra and I don't know, the Vigilant Jedi or someone else. That might be a thing. But I think those are the decks that kind of exist right now.
Yeah. Okay. Well, so let's go into I brought 3 and he brought 2, so I'll go first. Obviously, Phasma Troopers we already talked about. So what I'm showing right now between us is the deck list. So obviously, it's Captain Phasma, the new one, 21 points. First Order Stormtrooper for 7 points. Playing Advanced Training, which is a 2-point plot. And then Military Camp, which is the new battlefield that lets you activate 2 characters share a subtype. They're both troopers, and then you can reroll a die. For upgrades, we have 2 Quicksilver Batons and 2 Riot Shields. I think those are pretty self-explanatory.
Yep, agreed.
Those are the only upgrades I have because, honestly, people aren't living long in this deck, so I'm pretty much steering clear of it. For support, so I do have Conscript Squad and Imperial Officer. Conscript Squad is just an amazeballs card when you have a leader with guns, because it comes in with the leader. It's essentially an upgrade that it basically behaves as an upgrade with a leader. Right?
Yeah, I think the modifier is sort of not relevant because it's a trooper, right?
It is a trooper.
So like you can resolve based off Captain Phasma's text, right? You can resolve it as melee damage.
Correct.
Yeah.
So basically, it can even
tags with everything.
modify a blank.
Right.
Right.
Yeah,
Which is
so
crazy.
So it might as well be 1 damage, 2 damage, right?
Right. And then I added the Imperial Officer. The 2 for 1 gun on the Imperial Officer really stinks, but Imperial Officer is an autofocus when it rolls in, does have 2 single focus sides. And then for events, it's pretty much 0 and 1 costs. Sinister Peace, 2 of them. Browbeat for 2 of them. Just a more die in the pool one. Doubt, Electromagnetic Pulse. Make Demands, spot a leader to deal 2 damage. That's really good. Measure for Measure is an obvious include. Probe. And then kind of the spicy tech I put in was Pulverize, right? Because Pulverize is a 2 cost. It lets you resolve 3 of your dice showing damage, increasing their value by 1. If you get a lucky roll, you could, which isn't that hard because you've got 5 dice out there, you could easily hit for 9. Take somebody out.
Yeah, I think Pulverize is actually a little bit underrated right now. I think to the extent that an aggro deck exists, I think it's going to end games where the other person's not expecting it, at least right now.
I disagree. I don't think it's going to end games. I think it's going to end games turn 1. Because I think if you get a lucky roll turn 1 and you have it in your hand, someone out. Just drop somebody turn 1, right? I think that's where Pulverize is.
Getting a little bit of extra reach I think is really important because especially if there's going to be more, like if you, let's say you take out Padme round 1, then the game's over, right? Right.
Yeah, exactly. That's exactly where I'm going, right? Because let's think about it. You're only resolving 3 dice, and with Phasma, you have 2 more dice on the table that are probably damage sides. Right. So then I have Route, another one of those. I have a whole bunch of dice in the pool. Target Practice and Best Defense. Target Practice I can go either way on, but it's a 0 cost, and money's I think going to be tight because you're going to be moving as fast as you can. So what do we think about Phasma Troopers? What are you going to do to play it? I mean, obviously you're just going to, I mean, that one I don't know, there's a lot of strategy to playing it. You just punch over and over and over.
I think it's sort of, and just thinking on what it is now, potentially weak to Padme and Yoda, or just maybe any Padme deck because it's the 2 wide, relatively low amount of health. Riot Shield,
but not going to help you with the indirects.
And you're just getting blasted by indirect. I mean, obviously, the flip side is Padme is a pretty juicy target or pretty easy target early in round 1 or even early in round 2. So if you can drop her, then you probably just win the game. So I guess maybe,
especially if they're playing too heavy focus, which I think a lot of people are going to fall into that trap with Padme. Right. Play too many focus sides, and
I think people are generally down on Phasma or underestimate how good she's going to be. But I think if she's going against Mill, I think she's pretty strong because Mill's biggest weakness is just dealing with 1,000,000 dice, and Phasma is obviously generating 1,000,000 dice. And the other flip side is that she even handles blanks pretty well. So like, okay, you force jumped my thing to a blank, but I still at least get a damage out of it. I think it's going to be pretty tricky for those Mill decks to sort of handle it.
I agree. And because the main thing is Phasma's main weakness literally is her low health, which is not a concern with Mill. Right. Yeah, she's anti-Mill.
Yeah, so I think she's pretty, I think it's pretty solid. I think, the 2 wide, I'm going to throw 1,000,000 indirect damage at you is a little bit of a weakness, but I think she still has ways to mitigate it. I don't think she's going to be too terrible.
Yeah.
And being able to link up everything based on her ability, so everything does basically 1 melee damage is really, really strong.
So do you see any problems with the list or any changes you'd make?
Maybe I was just thinking a little bit about it, but like a tactical mastery or something.
Or just for some cheats?
Just to throw in 1,000,000 dice and then potentially blast someone out of the water. Though it is a little bit more methodical because she does have the 2 focus side. But that'd be maybe the only thing I would consider. I think a lot of people probably want to have some, or just maybe think to put like Mega Blasters in there. I don't know how the deck is making that much money, right?
Yeah, I don't know how you're going to afford it.
And then you have to put in like logistics and maybe fresh supplies to somehow like generate enough money.
Fresh supplies actually may be a good add.
But I think at the heart of this deck is just to roll in a million dice and try and kill them before they ramp too hard or they kill you.
Yeah, I mean, and that's one of the things in this deck, right? Is the worst side on your guys is the money side.
Yeah.
Right? So, well, I mean, I suppose it's the 2 for 1, but yeah, I don't know. It seems pretty strong. All right, so you brought a 3-wide deck for us.
Yeah, so I think everyone is probably at least somewhat thinking about Snoke, First Order Stormtrooper, and Watto.
And that's Elite Snoke, right?
Elite Snoke, right. So I think the idea here, and it's not too dissimilar, is pair Snoke with someone that generates a bunch of money, play some big supports, and then whether that's Vader's Fist or Mega Blaster Troopers, what have you.
Or both.
Or both, yeah. do a billion damage before they can kill you. I think the biggest issue, and I think this was before Entourage came out, was, okay, that's nice that you have Watto. Maybe he makes you a bunch of money, but like, what are you doing with that money? Or even then, you have a bunch of money, but you don't have the cards in your hand to lead to anything. I think Entourage really solved that a little bit. The fact that it can tutor one itself or other scoundrel supports, or just any scoundrel, which in this deck are supports. So it's running 2 Entourages, 2 Fickle Mercenaries, 2 Hired Muscles once that is out, since those are all scoundrels, and Watto is also a scoundrel. The Entourage has a 2 resource side on it, so you can, flip Watto, or ideally get Watto to his 2 resource side, or even the 1 resource side. I think the net is the same, 3 resources. But play out Entourage, maybe get that to its 2 resource side, get that money, use the Entourage ability to tutor maybe the other Entourage, and you can just get a crazy board state in the first round.
Very cool.
And then later on, now you're worrying just about getting them on their specials, because with 2 of those out and Watto, it's doing 3 damage, which is certainly respectable. Once you get Fickle Mercenaries and Hired Muscle out there, then it's like, potentially 7 damage off a special, which is sort of magical Christmas land a little bit. But I mean, 7 damage is almost 90% of any support character's life in the game, right? And then you still have Vader's Fist, which, I mean, if you get Vader's Fist out round 1, it's hard to see you losing that game. I mean, obviously,
I don't think that's changed from the last meta.
I mean,
right?
I guess it's possible, but it's pretty unlikely. And you still have Mega Blaster Troopers out. There's some spicy tech in this, like you have Archangel. So you do Archangel.
So let's run down the supports real quick. So for upgrades, there's only 2 upgrades bartering, but the supports is really what Alex is going for here. So we have 1 Archangel, 1 Dooku Solar Sailor. We have 2 Entourage, 2 Fickle Mercenaries, 2 Imperial Officers, 2 Mega Blaster Troopers. So you're really using the Imperial Officer there just for an extra leader slot in case.
Right. So I think it's really, the idea is you're going to kill Snoke first, right? Or they're going to kill Snoke first. So you need to have some backup. And flipping, it never hurts to flip the fist to its natural 3 damage side, right?
Sure. So Slave 1, Star Viper, 2 tech teams, and then 2 Vader's Fists. And then, as we were saying, because the draft kit's not publishable in the DB, you wanted to take out the...
I would have taken, Slave 1 and Star Viper would be replaced by 2 Hired Muscle.
2 Hired Muscle. Okay, perfect. So I'll actually update that on the list that we're showing here, so that's what you'll see instead of necessarily what we just listed there. And then for events, we have... This one's a pretty standard package. Beguile times 2, Doubt times 2, Exterminate times 1, For Price times 1, Forsaken times 2, Hidden Motive times 2, and then Route.
So I think what you're really doing, with the exception of Beguile, which is just a great event if you can afford it, but a lot of 0 cost and 1 cost sort of high upside removal, because for the most part, you're winning the game by ramping and playing huge things that they can't answer to, and you can't really expect to remove or even mitigate all of their dice. You're just trying to focus on your own board state, and you can't kind of be doing both. Because the supports here are expensive, right? They're not cheap by any means. But like Exterminate, if they ever I mean, if they're not sharing the same same subtype and they somehow roll both their character dice out, it's pretty punishing because basically that's two dice that are going to be gone, almost no matter what.
But Saw, Padme, well, Wedge, we don't think's a leader, right?
Yeah. Padme Yoda, for example, if they're they get to choose their Yoda dice or their Padme dice. Right. And I don't know how often it's going to come up. That's sort of why it's a one of, because in the examples where I don't know, they're matching on subtype, that card is dead and it feels terrible. But the other times it's it can be almost a 2 dice for 1, which is invaluable. You have Route, which is remove a die for each 3 dice you have in the pool.
Which isn't going to be a problem for you. That's
pretty difficult.
At least 1, probably 2.
Not very difficult to do. And this gets a little spicy. If you have Archangel, you can activate if you have both Mega Blasters. But even if you have 1, Archangel activates 2 supports. So you can at least get, I think with both of them, you're getting, was that like 6 dice in the pool? So your route now reads pay 1, remove 2 dice, which is insanely powerful right now, or ever.
Right.
And Forsaken, I think, is the best removal in the set. You roll
I would agree with that. You roll in
Sinister Piece is solid, yeah. But you roll in, Watto, they do anything, and you get to remove one of their dice showing 2 or less. Seems pretty good.
Yeah. Yeah.
Or, you roll in First Order Stormtrooper, doesn't particularly matter, or just roll in 1 support, right? Yeah, it's strong. I think it's play if only one, or if a character has 1 character dice in the pool,
it's
1 dice in the pool.
Yeah.
Okay, so it's even better than
play only player has exactly 1 die.
Okay,
in their
so
pool.
it's amazing. You just roll out 1 support. That's not Mega Blasters, I guess, and you get to remove a die.
Yeah. So the thing that scares me about this deck is from the minute you sit down at the table, you're on a ticking clock. Like you either win by the end of turn 3, round 3.
Oh, you mean as the opposing player?
As opposing player,
yeah, no,
you either beat this deck
way.
by the end of.
Right.
Actually, I take that back. As the opposing player, you are losing at the end of round 3.
Yeah, I 100% agree.
You need to do it faster than that.
Yeah, it puts such a clock because, and I think having Entourage be able to tutor other scoundrels, including itself, just makes it ridiculous because you play it for 3. It has a 2 resource side on it, so you can get almost 1 resource, and I mean it just can cause this crazy loop that if you can get that out, you can have 2 Entourages on the board plus another scoundrel
plus whatever the heck else you have in your hand. Yeah.
And it's like how, as the opposing player, like how can you possibly deal with that many dice coming?
You can't, right? No. It's Thrawn, Snoke, ties all over.
Yeah, and there's no mass removal. I mean, unless you're playing as a domination, which I can't imagine very many people are. You're just at the mercy of a million dice. I mean, even Vader's Fist just existing is the same, right? You can't deal with it that many times.
Right. All right, so my second deck, we kind of alluded to, we think Padme X is going to be something. So what I tossed together was just a very cursory Padme Wedge deck. So I have Padme for 14, Elite, Wedge for 15, and we're playing on the Salt Flats. Again, Alex and I are trying to avoid using Theed because we believe Theed's going to get nerfed, and generally when we nerf something that was really good, it becomes really, really bad. So we'll see what that goes. So we're trying to not use that, so Salt Flats. So I have downgrades, 2 hampered, and 2 target practice. I think those guys kind of speak for themselves. I have Padme's Royal Ship ×2. I have Lookout Post ×2 and Mortar Team ×2. So the reason I have Mortar Team over the Senate Chamber is because I feel that if you go too all in on the focus that you're a little at risk. And Wedge has a +3. The Lookout Post has nothing but pluses. You need a base side, so I think Mortar Team is really solid in this. I do have Suppressive Fire because I love that card because it modifies. Yeah. However, I could see swapping that out for the Senate Chamber if that's what you wanted to do. I skipped ahead. Suppressive Fire is a no-brainer. I have Cover Team in here because it increases by 1. Sorry, I skipped ahead. I have Cover Team in here. So what Cover Team does is you resolve a die showing indirect. So you can even resolve the Padme 3 focus for 4 indirect. The Cover Team I could see swapping out for Senate Chamber if somebody wanted to do that. And then for events, this is pretty straightforward. Field Medic and First Aid are your posthumous removal, right? Target Intel allows you to just blow down somebody if you need to. That may be redundant with Target Practice, I'm not sure. Target intel may actually be preferable to target practice, actually. Then I have fresh supplies for that extra $1, hopefully to help you get the ship out, because that's the real weakness in this deck, is getting the ship out, which you really want. Intense Fire's pretty much in this deck going to always hit for +2. Superior Position for just die removal, and then Motivate. So Hampered is really the key in this deck to make sure that you can move faster. Obviously, if you're playing Alex's previous deck, that's not a concern. But yeah, so I think this deck's pretty, this is not refined at all, but I think it's pretty standard for what you're going to see in this type of deck.
Actually, I think, you know, let's say you have this standing up versus the Yoda Padme, which has been floated around a little bit. You lose a little bit out, or you lose out on the consistency of the Padme ship, which is a great ship. But I think this is more focused on just doing damage and killing people. And you have Wedge out there, right, who's like in Yoda Leia or Yoda Padme. Everyone's going after Padme first, right? There's no decision. Just I need to kill Padme because if I don't, I lose. And this one, it's actually a little more spread out. And even Wedge being able to flip the ship, if it does come out, to the 3 focus without having to do anything is amazing. And he's obviously, either one of those characters can close out the game. And if you lose Padme first, you're actually probably not super sad about it.
Yeah, I still think you're gonna, I mean, I still think you're gonna lose Padme first.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, I think most people are gonna have to kill Padme ASAP, which will be a disadvantage of those direct damage or indirect damage focused decks. But
Wedge can close out the game.
Yeah, because I mean, Wedge focuses to the Wedge pseudo focuses to the 3 focus on the Starfighter, and then you're looking at 10 indirect.
Right. Because he has a +3.
+3
indirect. So I mean, just off their character dice, it's, I mean, what, in Magical Fairyland, it's 12.
It's 12
indirect
on turn 1 without spending a dime. Right.
And I think, I mean, you know, Miracle, Circumstance, even with AR, you can get 13, I guess, with Yoda and Padme. Obviously, if they hit all 3 focuses and Yoda's on his 2 focuses, that's very unlikely.
I mean, that's true. I hadn't really thought about using Yoda for.
But then you'd have no. I guess you would use. You couldn't then generate any money, so your pretty defenses down. I think this deck is really solid, and it plays Lookout Post, which is adding huge chunks.
Lookout Post is so good. Yeah. The only drawback of it is that you have to own the battlefield, but I think Hampered gets you there, and if you have it and you need to get it out, you can always just claim early and
you gotta play Motivate, which you can't, because I think it's spot 2 red characters, right?
Right.
No, I think this deck is really solid. I don't know if it's better than Yoda Leia or Yoda Padme. It's hard to tell. It's faster. No, for sure. It's definitely faster. I mean, it just outputs way more damage without having to really do anything, without having to mess with the character dice or getting a vehicle out. And also, if Padme's ship is gone, gets blasted out by Vandalize or N1 or whatever, and
or the Starfighter, or the Viper.
The Viper.
Starfighter, there we go.
Then that deck just crumbles, I think. So I think this is a lot more even. It's more of like a mid-mid pairing, whereas Padme Yoda is mid-mid, but the mid is the ship you're tutoring in the first round.
Right.
And if that ship goes away, then you're playing basically with one hand tied behind your back.
Yeah, I mean, again, we've talked multiple times on these casts about how Armed Reinforcement basically enables a 5-die deck, right? But when that 5-die deck is only damage if one of your characters is alive, it's a very different type of game, right? So
yeah, because AR is, yes, it's your 5th dice, but any character that gets 2 dice for less than 14 points, we can safely say isn't doing damage, right? That's just how the game is.
Yeah.
And Sol Flats is great on Padme. Like flipping her to the 3 focus is amazing. I think this deck is really solid, and yeah, it can close out with Wedge even if Padme is gone.
Yeah. All right, so now we're going to move on to Alex's mill deck. So I'll just open by doing, before we start the discussion, I'll just go down the list. So he has 1 Moxie, 2 Resistance Rings, which are a absolute no-brainer, 2 Stealthies, and then 1 Unscrupulous, 2 Anakin Racer, Dex Diner, 1 in 1, a Scrap Heap, 1 Senate Chamber, 2 Suppressives, 2 Easy Pickings, 1 Entangle, 2 First Aids, 2 flee the scenes, 2 forced compliance, 1 mend, 2 motivate, 1 no answer, 2 scruffies, and 1 strategic. All right, so what's the basic strategy in this
So the basic strategy is Leia take out their hand, and then Lando roll in with him and stealthy,
right, and
then just mill, a third of their deck in a turn or in one round. So yeah, the idea is to play stealthy, obviously on Lando. You get him to his 4 resource side, and then ideally special the stealthy, so it's 4 mil, and then Leia power action on the 4 resources to mill another 4.
Yeah,
that's not particularly difficult to do because you sort of roll out Leia. You threaten to take their hand because you're running motivates, and I put a 1 of the new discard 1 from their hand, and then mill 3 in this one.
So that is no answer.
No answer.
Yeah.
I had it as a 1 of just because with Resistance Ring, with its special, it lets you play events from your discard or from you or your opponent's discard, and so potentially you can recur it. So I felt I can maybe safely go a 1 of in some of these slots because if I have the Resistance Ring out, I can recur it. So yeah, the general idea is just to mill them way faster than anything else. I think you have Force Meditation, which uses its special to mill 2. I don't know, like you have Yoda special that can mill 1. Cassian that can mill 1.
You're talking in the Yoda mill version, right? Yeah.
And so just this is sort of I'd say Yoda, Cassian, Anakin is really, I'm going to remove all your dice or mitigate all your dice and just attrition
it's a control version.
Yeah, it's a control mill.
It's a control mill. This is an aggro.
This is aggro mill where if you don't have removal for my stuff, you're losing half your deck,
right?
Almost half of your deck. And that's what this version is obviously built off of. And so everything else is sort of dealing with the rest of their dice. I like the Resistance Ring. It's pay 1. You get the mill.
That's a no-brainer.
You get a mill right off the bat. I think, is it strength or weakness? Is 3 cost to mill 4?
3 for 4.
3 for 4. So you're almost on rate just with that card, except you get a dice with it, which has upside.
I would say you're better.
Yeah.
But
you get a dice with it, which is just amazing. And so you mill 1, plus you get the actual dice itself. It has a focus, which is great because sometimes you have difficulty getting Lando to his 4 for 2. I have a 1 of Unscrupulous because the other problem with this deck is if Leia goes down, you have no way to hit their hand. This gives Lando the ability to hit his hand.
No 3PO anymore, right?
So you're just sad that, okay, I guess you have 5 cards in your hand for the rest of the game. And I only have as a 1 of because it's Scoundrel only, so you don't want to be blanking on it late. Similar, Moxie lets you reuse a power action with its special. Oftentimes, Lando's dice are more. I mean, you're ideally getting the 4 resource side so you can use it to mill, but his other sides are pretty much blanks for the most part. So Moxie gives you another chance to use Leia's power action to like toss your 2 range side for 2 mil. And that's basically equivalent to a Force Meditation, and it has a resource and a focus side. The vehicles, Anakin's Pod Racer synergizes with Lando's power action. Playing FR1 is
it was one of the last tournaments we had pre-meta. You were playing this and dropped that with Lando, and I was like, oh, that's a good idea.
Yeah, I mean, a 2 shield side or the discard side are amazing. I mean, getting 2 shields for $1, and then they also have to mill a card is incredible. And then when you're not threatened, being able to discard a card and have them mill a card is incredible. And the fact that you pay 1 for it is insane. The N1 is more or less there to counteract just opponent vehicles.
Sure.
Mostly.
So that's just a meta defense card.
Yeah, it's mostly the Shadowcaster to take out a Shadowcaster, or Han's. Or Han Biggs, like a loaded up.
Yeah, that one doesn't
not as much.
Bad.
Yeah. Not as much, but it's there, and it has a synergy with Lando's power action. You get it played out for 2, and it has a 2 shield side, so it's not the end of the world.
Yeah.
Senate Chamber, Scrap Heap, Suppressive Fire. I think we've talked about those. Normal yellow suite of removal. I have Flee the Scene in here. You have to pass your turns, but generally speaking, if you're being fast or aggressive, which sort of this deck is, if you take out their 2 dice, I guess they have a chance to roll in, but a lot of these decks I think are going to be slow. And if they decide to pass and go to next round as the mill player, you're like, oh, okay, cool. We'll just skip your turn, I guess. Not the end of the world. And then sort of some red events. A lot of heals. First aid is great for keeping Leia alive, and the fact that you can recur them is amazing.
Yeah, you can't use it on Lando though, but
that's right. And then Scruffy to sort of take out either clear the way to basically have unmitigated stealthy turns, which are just so powerful.
Right.
I mean, milling 8 and they can't do anything about it is just brutal. And you can clear the way. You can see their hand at least, or maybe take out a support or something that might win them the game. And then strategic planning as the one of is just to once again exhaust Vader's Fist or exhaust the Shadowcaster just to keep you alive.
Gotcha. So I do have a question. How about for a price? So for a price lets you flip a yellow die to a side showing a cost. Obviously, that's what you were saying. Is sometimes it's hard not to get him on the one side of thing that you want.
Yeah, I think for a price, I think it'd be really good. Before I was running, prior to the Convergence, I was running Recon, which is way more, or just worse overall than for a price.
Because for a price is 0 and Recon's
1. I think the other one, and I would probably try to work it in there, is I think I have it in there as Force Compliance, which is flip an opponent.
Turn an opponent's die to any side, then turn one of your dice to a side showing the same symbol as that die.
So I think like sort of soft mitigation is I give you $1, but I'm going to flip mine to the 4 for 2.
Which is also like better than Recon.
Yeah, it's better than it's just an upgrade to Recon. Right. It acts as soft mitigation. Obviously, it costs 1, which is not. I think there's an argument between for price and Force Compliance. I think they sort of do the same.
Now that you're talking about Force, I think Force Compliance might actually be better.
And I think for price is pretty underrated because if they don't have $1, flipping their Vader's Fist to 3 for 1 is.
Oh no! I don't think for price is, at least not on this side of the table. For the price is.
I've seen people underrating it. Yeah,
I think it's a good call.
Yeah, you either flip yours to some side that you want to resolve.
And the thing is, in this deck with your resistance rings, you only maybe need one of it, right? So,
yeah, that's true. I was sort of like on the fence of, hey, can I just put all my red events to like 1-0s and then just hope to play with a resistance ring? I don't know if that's the right decision.
Is resistance ring only a red event?
It is.
Oh, so then I take that back. So for price can't. You can't one
right,
for price. Sorry.
Yeah. But I could see maybe going to split because I don't need 2 Force Compliances if I can potentially play it with resistance ring. Right. And the other synergy, I was thinking about maybe putting 2 scrap heaps because if you have 1 scrap heap, the resistance ring just pays for itself, right? Because you get a mill without having to. That seems pretty decent.
Yeah, resistance ring's pretty good. All right, so I mean, I think the aggro mill thing speaks for itself. The deck's all in all, the deck doesn't play any differently than it did post-rotation, but I think this deck got a huge shot in the arm.
No, I think it helped. I think Moxie, which is sort of a pseudo-cunning, it makes like a Lando side that you sort of didn't really care about into something that you might care about. And the spicy one, so we're talking about getting away from Theed, putting Mean Streets in here.
Yeah, so Mean Streets is claim. You may spot a scoundrel, place 1 resource on the battlefield. You may play an event from your hand, decreasing its cost by the number of resources on this battlefield. So it lets you claim and still remove, right?
So like playing this, and I'm maybe getting really combo-y here, but playing this into Flee the Scene seems incredible because it's basically remove 2 dice for 1, and I don't care about the downside, right?
Right, because the 2 actions that you lose
it doesn't.
You have to pass.
Yeah. So. And it's free if you have Lando because you put a resource on it, right, and then reduce the cost by it.
Oh, yeah.
So it's 0 cost remove 2, which seems,
0 cost remove 2 with no downside. Yeah.
Seems good.
All right, so that was Alex's last one. So to close out, we're going to talk about what I think is probably going to be the most popular deck early, of course, once the starters release, which is Afra, Grievous, Droid. This one's been talked about for, I don't know, the better part of Q1, right?
Ever since the starters were spoiled.
Yeah, so let's just go down this up. So we have single die Afra at 11. We have single die Grievous at 9. And then we have 2 battle droids at 6. However, those 2 battle droids are actually 5, right? So we go to 20 with Afra and Grievous and then a 5/5 because Grievous reduces the cost of those 2 droids. I'm using the layer of General Grievous, which deal an indirect to an opponent, or they give you a money. Either way, that doesn't stink. And then, or you can spot Grievous to actually just hit them for 1, hit a character for 1. So that's what battlefield we're using. Make them go for Grievous first, and Afra can stick around either way. For upgrades, we have 2 modular frames. Modular frame is a +1 health that redeploys amongst your droids. Doesn't seem bad in this deck. Supports, we have 2 BTs, 2 000s, 2 Staps is what I have, because I think that card is just incredible. I have 2 Assassin Droids, and I have 2 Bubble Shields. Bubble Shield being essentially your Force Illusion in this deck, right? For events, I have Flank ×2, Reprogram. I don't actually know if we need the Reprogram, but it does help with ramp. 2 Automated Defenses, spot a droid to remove a die. 2 Crash Landing, 2 Dangerous Maneuver, 2 By Any Means, 2 Probes, 2 Energize, and then 2 The Best Defense. So again, this isn't completely refined, but I don't know that this deck is really, this is kind of an auto include, deck kind of just builds itself, right? So we could probably go back and forth on a couple of cards that are missing, but.
Yeah, I think, you know, potentially things to think about would just be Climate Disruption Array.
Just for the mill matchup?
Mill.
Or although you do have 32 health.
Yeah, you have
a
million health,
right?
So it's whatever. Because you think it's sort of equivalent to a Padme to refocus side. Obviously, you take 2, but then you get a card. I reprogram. If you're running the 2, I guess you have 4. An Assassin Droid for 1.
The Assassin Droid costs 3, and that's why I have it in there.
Yeah, that makes sense. I think you're probably not doing Hailfire. I don't think anyone is running Hailfire anymore.
I mean, I'm not running any other vehicles, so
that's true.
The other thing used to work really well when you were recurring the Pod Racer, right?
Yeah, that's right. And maybe in the starter set, there's the 2-cost gun that has redeploy if it's on a droid.
Yeah, the
that
E5,
seems pretty decent.
I think.
Yeah, and it's like amazing size. I think it's a 1 damage plus 2 range.
4, yeah.
1 indirect plus 2 indirect or something.
We'll show it and pull it up,
solid.
but it is there's 4 damage sides on that thing.
Yeah, that thing is solid. I think what's the card where you can discard a card to remove a dice showing 2 or less?
Oh, Sinister Piece.
Sinister Piece might be worth it because you're drawing a million cards with Afra. Yeah. So it's sort of like even sense. Less of a, you don't even care. I like Energize with Assassin Droid. Yeah, it's just incredible. I think the only question, and it's not a question with this list, I think probably the sort of the events and the supports are more or less the same, and even the upgrades. I think is there a way to get Watt in some list that makes sense? Because Watt plus like Assassin Droid is incredible. I don't know if he's going to be worth it.
I don't think you can play Watt, and I was going back and forth on that, right? I mean, Afra Watt with this, like the Assassin Droid Watt combo is just stupid good, right?
It's incredible.
I don't know that you can run Grievous. Like, I think you have to run either Grievous or Watt.
You might be giving out
and then your points start getting really weird, right? Because Watt is 912, Afra's 11. Like, I think you play single die Afra, you just do it. Her dice stink. You don't need her for her dice, right?
She's for the card text, and that's basically it.
So you're playing Afra, Watt's 912, so that's 20 or 22. So I guess you could play 22 and then...
Yeah, I think
it's a messenger droid probably for Rainbow.
Yeah, I think there's just a lot of... Oh, yeah, so the other thought I think when I was thinking about it was... Oh, no, it wasn't this deck, but I think it was Afra at 11, Grievous, and Sentinel Messenger.
Because it makes the Sentinel Messenger 7.
Yeah, which is... You lose health.
It's elite Grievous?
Yeah.
Okay, so that's 11, that's 23, yeah, that's 30. Yeah.
So you're obviously losing out on health, and I don't necessarily know. I guess you have Forsaken, but Blue, I don't know if Blue Villain necessarily...
Well, Hidden Motive never stinks.
Hidden Motive, yeah. It was great. And I just like, I think, I don't know, being able to play a card from the top of your deck just seems...
Feels good.
Yeah, just like, sweet, I get to play this free thing. And actually, it's probably pretty relevant because, if it's, let's say, you're playing Afra, the worst thing in the world is you mulligan and you don't get a BT or a triple O. I don't know if you play the Messenger and it's, or even no droid, right? And it's a droid and now you can actually use her ability. That feels pretty good.
Right.
But you lose out on so much health, so I don't necessarily know if that's worth it. But I think there's a lot of Afra decks that exist, and it's going to take a little bit of time to land on the correct one, but it's hard to go wrong with that ability, and the character pairings that you currently have.
Yeah, we have an extra Afra, and I've been sitting on it until the set drops because I expect her price to go up.
Yeah, I think she's going to be 20, 25 if she's not already there.
Yeah, I mean, she may already be there. So, okay, but yeah, so those are our 5 early meta lists. I know, to be clear, we know there are other decks out there, right? Alex mentioned Palpatine. Palpatine's going to be out there. Again, that's another deck that I think kind of builds itself, so you can probably get there.
Search for abilities in Star Wars Destiny DB,
right.
and then put Watto in the deck, and then put everything in there.
X ability.
Yeah, and then just put that in there, and then put a few more cards and call it good. Yeah. No, I think there's some other decks, Shadowcaster obviously, and there's even decks that don't necessarily change much in the new rotation, or in the new with this new set.
Well, I mean, we already talked about those, right? With Shadowcaster, Han for being the all basically any AR deck. I don't think has really changed much, except now the ones that
maybe like Padme. People are going to play a bounty deck, which will be.
We'll see about that. I don't know about Dengar Asajj. That one.
I like to see if Jabba has a home. I think you might see Jabba, some sort of Jabba delve, and then just play like. Planetary. I mean, just play gigantic things because
Jabba Watt. I mean, you can't. I get that you can't Watt delve, right? But
yeah, I think
Jabba Watt's 25 though.
And then just jam your deck with huge things, and then hope to cheat him out with delve, because I think the ability for Jabba to potentially grab a delve when you don't have one, because you'd always either be stuck with huge things that you couldn't play, or delves and not a huge thing.
Right.
So alleviates it a little bit. But I think there's a lot of decks.
Well, but you can't delve into the messenger, right? But
that's right. You have to play a card from your hand, yeah.
But so that's what, 10. So Jabba's 10, 13. Watt is 9, so that's 22. So yeah, you can play with the messenger. Yeah. And get a rainbow there. Yeah, I don't know if that sounds as strong, but there may be. I don't know. We'll see. It's very early meta. We'll see what happens.
And I think there's going to be some Emphas deck that sort of.
Oh, I think Emphas Talisman I think is going to be a thing.
Yeah.
Emphas Talisman. I know some people are saying Emphas Yoda. That one doesn't seem as good. Being able to just play that Electro Ripper is so good.
Yeah, it's pretty good. Do damage and remove a dice. It's always solid. Can't go wrong with that. I think there's some potential for decks that are out there, but I think you're going to see a lot of ones that come out that are heavily leveraging the new set.
Yeah, everybody wants to play people
right. Yeah, no one wants to. Yeah. Hey, let me play my old Shadowcaster deck that I've been playing for the last 6 months. They'll probably want to try something new. So
yeah, Shadowcaster looks pretty good. All right, so we're going to move into a quick question. So episode 18, 2 episodes ago, was kind of a deck building strategy one, and one of the questions we got was from Bomogala. Thanks for the vid. What are your thoughts on running one of cards? Do you generally try and always have 2 of each? What about unique upgrades and supports? So the easy answer here is that I generally personally subscribe to the if it's good enough for 1, it's good enough for 2, or in the Magic, if it's good enough for 1, it's good enough for 4.
Yeah, that's right.
Strategy, right? But that's not entirely universal in this game, right? I mean, the obvious. I mean, as he asked, right? Obviously, like if you're running like a Mace Saber, you're probably only running one Mace Saber. Yeah. And we've seen that for the last couple sets, right? We would run like 1 heirloom, 1 dagger, and 1 Ray Saber or something like that, right? Instead of running like 2 daggers.
Sure.
And I noticed that most of the lists I showed were all 2-ofs, but you had several 1-ofs in both your lists.
Yeah. So I think it comes down a little bit to redundancy and then just the strength of that particular card. I think Vader, Greedo, and if people are still playing Vader and Greedo, they're absolutely going to run 2 of Vader's Saber because that's how powerful it is on Vader.
Yeah,
but you're never running.
You need it,
right? You're never running 2 Maul's Sabers, right? So there's no hard and fast rule. It's really how badly do I want this card to start with. If I absolutely want it always in my starting hand, then you're probably playing it as a 2-of, even if it's a unique. In the example of Leia Lando, 1 was Moxie. I mean, it's good, but I don't necessarily need 2-of. I don't think, because it's not.
You're not going to put 2 of them out,
right? The better question, and this a little bit somewhat similar in Magic as well, but it's how badly do I want the second copy is generally sort of part of the equation. If the second copy is basically dead, then maybe I will want to run it as a 1-of. Similar, I have Unscrupulous as a 1-of because if I get 2 and Lando's dead or something, then I can't play it, right? I think a lot of the blue lightsabers fit into that category, especially in non-mono.
Well, and to be clear, the blue lightsabers are kind of an easy out on this question because so many of them are so similar, right? That you can easily find it's like, basically like in Alex's example, he was saying, well, I need 2 Vader saber. Like I need the 2 Vader saber. And in the case of the blue sabers on the hero side, it's like, well, do I really need the dagger mortis? Like I've got 5 other lightsabers that essentially are the same cost and do the same thing, right? So in that case, why rat hole yourself by putting 2 in unless you really need it? So
yeah, and it's it's just do I absolutely need this in my starting hand? If I got this plus something else, would I feel bad about mulliganing it? If the answer to that is yes, then maybe you want as a 2 of. If no, then you're probably fine as a 1 of. I don't think anyone's out there saying I need Rey's lightsaber first round, otherwise I'm not going to win this game, or I feel less favored. Whereas Vader's saber is not that way. Yeah, I think the unique example, it is a little bit of a cop out because it's kind of easy. It gets harder.
Like the supports and stuff, right? There's a lot of times you'll run 1 of them supports. But to get to the heart of the question, what makes you decide what running a 1 of for an event?
1 of for event, I think if I think it's going to be useful more late game or has like a very high impact, but not always have that high impact, I would probably think about running it as a 1 of versus a 2 of. I think if I remember right, like Yoda casting Anakin's for a while, I don't know if they were running 2 hyperspaces. It might have been 1, but I think that's one of those things where I need this at this moment, and it's going to win me the game. But all other times in the game, it's probably dead or almost dead. That's when it's going to be a 1 of versus a 2 of. It's just the logic of, is this card always live and can I always use it? If so, yes, 2 of. If not, 1 of.
Right. And the card to card basis, like Beguile is the example that I like to use, right? Like Beguile is something that a lot of times I'll run a 1 of because it's hugely impactful when you play it, but it's very difficult to play.
That's right.
But it also depends on your cost curve, right? So like if you're running Alex's second deck, like the Tarkin deck, you're probably running 2 Beguiles because you're not worried about it.
That's right.
However, if you're running like a blue hero deck that's always starved for money, then you're probably only going to run 1 Beguile.
And like, I think maybe Pulverize, or what's the double... Is a Power Surge?
Power Surge.
Power Surge is
allows you to resolve a die for double.
Right. If I see it in my mind as sort of like a finisher, maybe I'd be more likely to run it as a 1 of.
Right.
But then if your deck is highly leveraged on killing a character really early or winning the game with it, then maybe I would run as a 2 of. So there's some variables that go into it.
Right. Like in the Phasma deck, I think you run 2 of Pulverize because you want to hit early.
That's right.
Yeah. But in like the Power Surge, actually that's a great example because Power Surge I think is a 1 of.
Yeah. I think
right? Or like my ally is the Force, right?
Yeah, that's right.
Like from early days would be like a 1 of.
Right.
Whereas, although maybe not my ally, but I don't know. That was a different meta back then.
Yeah, I think it's just when am I going to play this? If I play this, am I ever going to play this in round 1 or like round 2? Right. If not, then I probably played as a 1 of because I either get it and then I use it to reroll or discard it or whatever early on, and I don't feel too bad about it. Or I get it late game and it wins me the game and I feel super happy.
Right.
If you have a 2 of, then it just ends up being 2 dead cards. Yeah. Or potentially 2 dead cards.
Of something like that, right? Whereas you compare it to like a He Doesn't Like You or a Doubt or something like that where it's just always on.
That's right.
Like it's just a no-brainer.
Right. Yeah. And mitigation, I think, it's hard for mitigation ever to be dead other than like, the examples of 2 costs, right? Mm-hmm. If it's 1 cost, you probably can always play it. Upgrades, it gets a little tricky because I think the unique rule sort of applies where I run this as a 1 of unless this unique is so core to my deck that I need to have 2 of them.
Right, like most people running 2 Vader's Fist. Right, like not most, like everybody who runs Fist is running 2 Fists because it's just that good.
Right. And Vader's Fist, some of those cards sort of throw it out of whack because Vader's Fist wasn't as good as it was. Then you probably wouldn't run 2 of, but it's just so game warping that it is.
Who's running 2 5-cost supports?
That's right. Yeah, and the only way you would do that, right, is if it was so amazingly above everything else that, of course, I'm going to run 2 because I absolutely want to get 1 during the game. If it was like nerfed or some other example, Mega Blaster Trooper, since it's not unique. Let's say Mega Blaster Trooper was unique.
That's not unique.
If it was, right, you probably would run 1 of, maybe.
I don't know. I think it depends on your deck.
I think it depends. But I think that'd be a bigger argument than...
Yeah, it would be.
Than
I agree with that.
Yeah.
But I think it's still 2.
Yeah, I think, probably. But it would be a decision point, right? Versus Vader's Fist, where you're just like, no brainer, I'm absolutely running 2.
Yeah. Or if you're running Double Down, you run 3, right? Like,
yeah, you're just like, how can I get more of these cards in my deck? And I think that's the biggest. As long as you're asking yourself that question or sort of critically thinking about it, I think you're probably on the right path.
Yeah. All right, fair enough. Great answer. So, all right, I think that's all we have for today. Do we have anything else? Anything we skipped?
No, I think looking forward to Constructed. I think there's a lot of new stuff that was released. I think it's going to be. Everyone needs to focus. Everyone needs to
good stuff.
Good stuff. Everyone needs to really be cognizant of their play space because it's just going to be support central. I think games are going to get.
And downgrades.
Rounds are going to get longer. Oh yeah, downgrades.
Your character is now like this big, right? Because you've got the upgrade below the guy. Now there's this downgrade sticking out from underneath, which makes it hard to rotate with tokens. And
I'll give you some sympathy trying to edit some of these videos where you're gonna be over the top and trying to figure out what the hell's going on in the game state because it's gonna be a mess. But no, I'm really looking forward to it. I think the game is gonna slow down way more than it was. With some exceptions, but I think it's going to be a little support dirtle fest.
But by slow down, we're still talking about end of round 3. It's just that rounds are going to take longer.
Right. I think you're going to get, and I don't mean to bring in sort of the magic aspect of it, but you're going to know when the game is over.
Before the
game's over, right? Like it's going to be more aggro.
I think that's
and
a
more
very fair statement.
Control, and if First Order Stormtrooper Snoke Watto gets out like 4 supports round 1, the writing's probably on the wall unless one of those characters is almost dead.
To quote someone, Scoop City.
Yeah, Scoop City. Afra decks, I think. Actually, I like Afra because it's always like, even if you're winning as the Afra, you probably did yourself 1 million damage in the meantime, so it seems closer. So I guess that's okay, but I think there's going to be a bigger dichotomy of aggro decks and control decks, and if the aggro deck doesn't win by into round 2, the game's sort of over.
Right. Yeah. All right. So fair enough. Hey, so if you like what we're doing here on Dice Commando, please give us a like, give us a subscribe. Thank you very much for Alex for joining us for the last 2 episodes. We'll definitely have Alex back. He's a recurring member of the cast. So if we have nothing else, go Commando.
Go Commando.